Welcome everybody to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno, episode 27. Today's guest is co-founder of Pro Prep Academy here in Winnipeg, and as well as a linebacker for the Montreal Alouettes. Please welcome DJ Lalama. DJ, thanks so much for being on today's episode.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Really looking forward to joining you here, and long overdue. So I appreciate you having me on.
So let's dive right into things around Pro Prep. So you and Andrew obviously are good friends, and we're able to collaborate on an idea that has given an opportunity for those who were without a football season this year at the high school and university level to play. When did the inception of this idea come about, and how did you guys follow through with the details to delivering this great product?
For sure. No, great question. Honestly, the pro prep idea and I guess the overall broader vision really started about a year and a half ago. It was something when we were playing for the Bombers together. Kind of this initial concept on how can we give back and kind of use our platform within the community to kind of serve the next generation of student athletes, right? And that idea obviously kind of hit COVID in the mouth, and we kind of had to readapt and kind of evolve what we wanted to do. And really what we saw is the biggest need and the way that we could fill the void was that flag football league. As past football players in the league ourselves, I can't imagine being grade 9 through 12 and not having football. One, just from the emotional, the social side of things, obviously the mental side of getting through the rigorous days of school, giving you something to look forward to, and kind of pushing you to maximize your potential on and off the field. But I mean that fourth component of just playing sports, it's something that we all love to do. And with that taken away from these kids for a bunch of different reasons, Andrew and I kind of reached out, pooled our resources, had great kind of advice from both Football Canada and Football Manitoba, and we were able to kind of come together and promote a safe alternative where kids, again, obviously it's not tackle, but we thought that with the new rules that we kind of implemented, that it was something close, and it would give them that opportunity to compete, continue to work on the skills that are obviously transferable in that setting, and lastly just have fun. 2020 has been a year where, I mean, obstacles galore, a lot of heartache, a lot of unknowns, and I think just seeing smiles and the raw emotion on the kids' faces ultimately, kind of did justice for us with kind of letting that come full circle. And we were super excited on, how it came to be, and, the officials and all the volunteers and the staff and the coaches, the volunteer coaches, the parent, like everyone came together to make it a success. And was it perfect? No. I mean, Andrew and I went from playing in the CFL to commissioners overnight, and I give Jeff Bannon now a lot of credit, because it's not easy to kind of put something together like that. But we had a bunch of great people working with us in partnership to make sure that the kids had something to look forward to.
And it's incredible to think that this idea was something that had started for you guys before COVID had hit and the CFL season had been canceled, because I think that kind of brought together a greater reason for it to really launch, because that alternative for no high school is huge, especially at a time where you realize kids don't have a senior season. And especially with the rules that have been implemented in Winnipeg high school football over the last years, people are capped out at age 18. So even if they're still in high school, they can't play that last year of grade 12 football, which is huge. Can you talk about what it means to play that senior season in high school football, and think back to your experience with St. Paul's?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think I have a St. Paul's helmet actually right behind me here, but it means everything, and that's not just the St. Paul's thing. That's, I think, for any, student athlete that plays any sport at any school here in Manitoba, that senior year is your capstone. It kind of allows you to reach the pinnacle of every single ounce of blood, sweat, and tears that you've put into it over the 4 years. And not kind of having these, or this graduating class be able to see that and let it come to kind of full fruition here, it hurt me, just seeing it. And obviously I'm still close with a lot of, St. Paul's Crusader, players right now, guys that go to different schools, that I train on the side and whatnot. And just hearing like the utter disappointment in not having something to look forward to. And, that's first and foremost, but then you kind of pull back another layer there, and it's, okay, what do I do now for recruitment? And that's why it was so important for us to film every game and give them something. like I understand recruiting coaches probably aren't sitting there and going through flag football film to decide, hey, are you getting a scholarship or not? But I hope that, you know, if kids that were maybe on the brink of not even getting an opportunity to play junior, or not even getting, you know, an opportunity to get any dollars, perhaps, you know, the pure athleticism that they showed on tape, you know, can speak louder than no film at all. And you know, that was kind of the premise on bringing, you know, Mike Still on, and Neil Noonan, two great guys that have obviously you know, helped, you know, pro prep and all of its members kind of shine a spotlight on them and their stories and their abilities. And that's why, you know, we went that route. And I can't put into words really what it would mean to not have that senior season. I just know how important it was for myself, and I think I can speak for you and others. That's what you look forward to. And, you know, now it's kind of, I think, on everyone else that's come before them to give these kids hope, and to give them a platform. Yes, it's going to be different, but hopefully they can kind of realize their full potential in some other way, and continue forward.
And I mentioned, or pardon me, when you mentioned the part about how important it is to have that senior season and the capstone, I was even having a conversation the other day with some friends who are a few years younger than I, and who
Mhm.
were talking about the reminiscence of their high school final when they played just single A, and talking about, oh, this place still gives me anxiety to this day, and just the emotions that
Yeah,
surround those games, whether they're wins or losses, those things will stay with you for a long time. And to not even get the opportunity to do that is even more devastating. So having the chance to even just have something on film, and you're right,
yeah,
are CIS or are you sports coaches sitting in their basements picking apart film like John Gruden of a guy playing flag football? Most likely not. But
sure,
that opportunity to see them show their skills in some sort of way is at least better than nothing. And
for sure.
obviously, you understand that there is a big part of having those skills shown in being able to be recruited, right? You're
Yep,
obviously, you went to play for, or for those who are listening out there may not know, you went to go play for the hometown University of Manitoba Bisons. But for
yep,
those to get the opportunity to go to other provinces, it's not as easy if there's not coaches in your backyard watching. So when you went to your university career and played for the Bisons, what was the important part about playing at home to you that really allowed for that relationship to develop with playing for Manitoba?
sure. So yeah, actually, I took a scholarship and went to Western right out of high school. So I did that for 1 year, and you know, it just, I love the school, I love the people. There was a coaching change, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall that I didn't necessarily fit the new system and kind of the new way there. And I made the decision to come back home, and you know, I think just by having Coach Dobie be around for so long, you know, I've known him since I was probably in grade 9 or 10. You know, he was around scouting older players, and you kind of organically form that relationship. The football community obviously is very tight knit, and you know, there's only so many camps and so many different things that you can go to. And Coach Dobie likes to go and talk your ear off. So it's one of those things where, again, that organic relationship was one that was left on good terms, even when I took the scholarship to Western. And as soon as I knew that I wanted to leave, it was a quick call. And you know, I still bug him about this day. Like my cell phone bill with the long distance minutes of him talking while I was in my Western dorm, he still owes me a few $100. But I mean, coming home is coming home, and it's always going to be there. And that's kind of what my parents always said is, you know, go away, try it. You know, if you have the opportunity and that's something that interests you, because you can always come home. And I think Coach Dobie's done a great job of opening his doors to pretty much everybody, local or not. And you know, I was very fortunate to come to the Bisons at the time I did. The new stadium, obviously, there was a bunch of local talent that decided to stay home, kind of within my year or two. And you know, we kind of reached the climax there in 2014, coming up a field goal short in the national semi. But coming home was the greatest decision I could have made. And my Bison experience is something that I truly look back fondly of. And you know, whether it's Keenan or Nick Dembski or these guys, I mean, we still talk about moments to this day. And those are brothers for life. And I'm glad that we had that kind of nucleus of homegrown talent to kind of propel that stage of our careers forward.
And I remember watching the 2014 Bisons as it happens, as more of a fan, I guess you would say, seeing the progression from what almost was like the Bombers last year in 2019, having to go as road warriors the entire way to the national championship, and obviously the unfortunate shortcoming in the national semi against the Carabin. But that team embodied so much significance for Manitoba because it was the first team that had made it to the Vanier or made it to the national semifinal since the '07 team, and there were so many comparisons to that team that won it all against St. Mary's that 7 years ago. Talk a bit about what some of the challenges were in going out on your own in that first year at Western and how those lessons helped you rally when you came back to Winnipeg.
For sure. I mean, I think the first thing is just maturity. You know, I come from a big Italian family, and you know, obviously, you know, cooking, cleaning, like all the little things that you don't really think about that you kind of take for granted. When mom's not there, you got to grow up really fast, and that was kind of the first thing, obviously, and I think second is just it's a new social circle, and it's a new place. You know, I'm not going to say it's a culture shock, but definitely a different way of life in London versus Winnipeg. You know, especially in a place like Western, you have recruits and students from literally around the world. And, you know, it's much different than a commuter campus, you know, here in Winnipeg, where you kind of, you know, drive a car, park it, go into class, leave your class, go home. It wasn't like that at all. So it was getting used to it, you know, was the first thing. And then time management. You know, St. Paul's, I think, does a great job, and you can speak to this, of just preparing you for the kind of that post-secondary education, and giving you the resources and the aptitude to understand what's ahead. But as good of a job as they do, you still need to learn, and there's still going to be that adjustment period. And that was, you know, something that I guess I wasn't really sure what I was stepping into. You know, I did, oh, I'm going to take 5 classes, and I'm going to take, you know, 2 second-year courses, and play football and do all these different things. And quickly I learned that there's a much gradual path, you know, much more gradual path that's needed to do things well. I credit Tyler Varga, my roommate, actually, who ended up playing for the Indianapolis Colts. He's a brilliant man. You know, hence why he's doing what he's doing now in the financial sector. But you know, that was someone I actually really leaned on, and he kind of taught me his study habits, and how to time manage, and being able to kind of remove myself from Winnipeg, grow up on my own, and kind of, you know, just do me for a bit and figure myself out on a personal note. You know, come back through trial and error, and be able to kind of apply that new knowledge, that new understanding, that new kind of gratitude to the situation that you're in, and just a chance to play football again, and have people in the stands that care about you, your friends, your family, etc. You know, that was kind of the big learning curve for me, and I'd like to think that it allowed me to put my best foot forward when I came home.
And it is obviously a very difficult situation for those that move away to universities, especially one like Western. The lore of the football program, the the height of the university life in London, and like you
Yep.
mentioned, it not being a commuter campus like U of M, totally different scenario and environment for someone that's 18 years old. Especially, you mentioned it's not really a culture shock, but there is a small element of that because the way that people live life in Winnipeg or the prairies is not the same as the way that people live life in southwestern Ontario, especially in a smaller town like London, where people are centered around the university. And you compare Western games to Bison's games, the environments are different based on what people value. And obviously, the facilities matter. If you have a stadium of 40,000, you're not going to fill in university. But
Yep. Yep.
it's interesting how an experience like that can make you grow up super fast. But it's not necessarily a bad thing to return home because there are those big advantages to being in a familiar environment and being around people who you've seen for most of your life. And also
Yep.
just being around a coaching staff who's very familiar with who you are.
Sure.
So when you learned, because obviously with the Bisons, you were able to become very successful and do lots of great things on the defensive side of the ball and get the opportunity to be drafted into the CFL. When you were coming to that transition period before becoming a pro and the end of university, what were some of the thoughts going through your mind as to how you were going to use the lessons from going to Western to adjust and apply them when you take a step to become a professional football player?
That's a great question. You know, I think it's just first and foremost, I mean, it's about the environment that I think you're leaving. So you know, I don't think it's much about that transition that I took on myself to Western. I would say it's more actually that transition coming back, knowing that you're back to the bottom of the totem pole. You know, I was a rookie at Western, not necessarily a first year student coming back home, but you're kind of a rookie again, right? You're the unknown. No one knows you, you know, outside of the local guys. And you kind of have to earn your stripes again. So I think that piece maybe is something that translated a little bit more in terms of, okay, here we go again. Everything is not, just going to be given to you. You have to earn it. You got to earn everyone's respect again. And you're in a new program, a new culture. So I think those pieces were evident, but I give the Bisons a lot of credit. The culture we built, Matt Barr, Coach Dobie, Stan Pierre, it really felt like a bit of a professional atmosphere there already. Obviously the play on the field, I think spoke to that. And I think just having so many guys year in, year out there for the 3-4 years I was there, going pro and coming back, kind of speaking and providing wisdom on that situation, it prepares you a little bit more, right? And it kind of gives you almost a little bit of insight into what it would be like without actually going through it yourself. And I mean, from an actual football standpoint, I mean, Stan Pierre is a mastermind. From a defensive standpoint, I'll be completely transparent. His defense is harder to grasp at that level than any defense I've had to grasp in the CFL. And the fact that, again, he treats you like a professional, he expects you to learn like a professional. I think that's something that served myself and obviously all of my other past teammates that are currently playing in the CFL, really well, because it made that transition all the more easy and kind of expected than maybe coming from some other programs.
And it's good you mentioned Coach Pierre, because he was one of the first guests I had on the show, and he talked about his experience with working in a small staff and even interviewing Coach Dobie as well. And we, if you know that I like to talk, and obviously he likes to talk, you can imagine the electricity and water combination of endless conversation with him, and in talking about what it's like running a program with 2 full-time staff members, but the importance of the relationships between him, Coach Pierre, Coach Mitchell, and Coach Urbanovich, having been together, those 4 with the Bison's program collaboratively, each for like 25 years plus. I don't think there's a group of 4 guys you'll find across the entire nation in youth sports football that have been together coaching for that long with the same program in consecutive order. So when you mentioned the professionalism of the program, did you find because if I'm not mistaken, you were drafted by Edmonton, first, right? So when you first arrived in Edmonton, did you find that there was less of a shock going there than when you first went to Western from high school, or what was that transition like in terms of its initial phase of being a part of a CFL team?
Sure. No, it's another good question. I'll be honest. So, again, playing in IGF, I think it gets you familiar to an environment like that, just from a facility standpoint. So that was kind of one thing that was already a feather in my cap. But again, I was fortunate to go down to the Giants on a trial basis. About I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before CFL camp started. And for me, that's kind of where I got all those nerves and butterflies kind of out of the way as my first professional camp. You walk in, you have Odell and Eli and Rashad Jennings and all these guys sitting in there, and a bunch of first-round picks, Sterling Shepard and Eli Apple that just signed for whatever it was, $15 million. And I'm sitting there as a Canadian kid, just kind of happy to be there. And you kind of learn real fast what it means to be a pro. And, you look to some of these other guys that are obviously huge investments by the team, and you see the type of work that they're putting in and the attention to detail and what the coaches, again, their livelihood is based on this, how much they care and put forth in this. And I think that experience translated really well to Edmonton in terms of just knowing what to expect from that kind of professional setting. And again, I'll be honest, Eddie Steele and Donnie Aromacion, 2 local guys, we kind of had a little convoy out to Edmonton from Winnipeg. We all trained together for a lot of years now. And they kind of took me under the wing and kind of, told me what to expect in the locker room, how the different guys kind of interact and, what the expectation is, so that I wasn't just kind of walking into, kind of blindfolded, I guess, is the best way to put it. And, Armando Sewell, another guy that kind of took me under the wing right away. And these are still guys I talk to, as recent as yesterday, honestly. So kudos to those 3 guys on, making my, I guess, transition a little smoother. And to the Edmonton organization, just, Ed Hervey, Jason Moss, they did a great job of making you feel like one of their own. And honestly, the transition was pretty seamless, and I'm happy that I got to learn how to be a pro with Edmonton.
You mentioned the experience with the Giants, and obviously there's a few other guys that have had those experiences before in the past, Canadians, which is obviously a great chance for guys to learn how to become pros and get those nerves out of the way. When you were with the Giants, were there any things that stuck out, or was it hard to not be starstruck in a way when you see guys like Odell and you watch like the catch that he made against the Cowboys the year before, or watching Eli Manning, someone you've seen slay the dragon like Tom Brady in Super Bowl? Was it hard to not be starstruck, or were there moments of human connection that made you realize that you were in the right place, or that you weren't as far from being a pro as maybe you would have thought when you first walked in?
Sure. I mean, I'll be honest. I think, that kind of limo ride from the airport to the facility and kind of doing your walk around, I think there was a little bit of like, okay, like I'm actually here. It's like, oh, hey, like we have 5 personal chefs. This is going to be your personal chef for the weekend. And, what do you want to eat? And it's like, okay, and then you walk over and you got Nike shoes probably filling up the entire size of my house, and same idea, right? So you're a little taken back just with like how big of a business this really is, down south, and obviously the resources, and again, like you said, like there's 3 swimming pools, and the gym looked like a Altea active just for the Giants. Like it was just crazy to see, what football meant at that level. And as soon as you kind of do that walk around, you kind of get situated, you sit down in your locker and you go, okay, everyone else is sitting in their locker, like you're supposed to be here, or you deserve to be here. And at that point, I actually sat with BJ Goodson. He was a captain at Clemson back in the day, and I think he was a 4th round pick that year. And he was the other linebacker, similar stature. Everyone else was like 6'4", 250, and BJ and I are 6-footers, 220 pounds. And I started just watching him. As a draft pick, they've already invested in him. How does he go about his day? How does he use his kind of frame and provide opportunity on the football field? So I really just kind of paid attention to those conversations, kind of picked BJ's brain, on those things, and obviously his experience at Clemson, and then just the other Canadian guys that were down there. I think there was about 6 or 7 of us. So, forming some relationships, and Phil Gagnon, who I've been a teammate with in Montreal since, and Terrell Davis, Taylor Loeffler. So there was a cool group of us that got to experience that together. And when you strap on the helmet and you go out there on the field, is the play of the quarterbacks, honestly, where like they don't miss. Like every ball is a really good ball. And the windows that they fit them in is crazy. And I think second to that is not necessarily the speed of the game, but just like the soundness of everyone's like technique. In Canada, obviously there's a lot of raw athletes. I mean, Dave Onyemata, a great example, played in front of me, just a tremendous athlete, and he's still learning football, right? Like even now, like he hasn't played that long. And then there's that rawness about him. And you go down there and it's like, everyone's just like, they're dialed in, they hand placement's correct. They're in the right spots. And there's just something that's like, okay, like giddy up, like you want to play at this level, like you better learn it, and you better, learn it fast. So
It's like everything that you describe about that is so mind-blowing in a way to those who are outsiders, because there were a few stories that I'd heard from some of the experiences I've had through my football career. And when I was at University of Calgary for a year, the recruiting coordinator, who was also the DC at the time, Matthew Berry, picked us up and took us to the stadium and told us about Eli Buka and because he was a former Dino who was drafted, or I think he was signed, one of the two, by the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
And that experience of being in the NFL and the difference, the staggering difference to the CFL. You get off the airplane, okay, here's your passport, here's your ID, here's this, here's that. We're going to take you here. You got your own chef, you got whatever you want, gear, whatever you want, this, that. Like you mentioned, Altea active for the Giants. Like, absolutely. It's such a quintessential part of the culture of sports in America. The NFL is a behemoth of a business for that reason, and you can really see it. So when in that position, it's really, I like the part you mentioned where you started watching the guy was similar to you, right? You were paying attention to how he executed everything that he did. And mind you, the way that us outsiders will watch on TV or watch a practice is, oh, these guys, or this player's not good, that player's not good. But if you really watch, they're amazing. They're not missing anything. And when they're competing against each other, then that's when you see, if you make a mistake, the room for error is this big. It's so slim. You can't screw up. So like, was it really hard to be scared of making a mistake when you were in that position, or was it easy because you knew that it was a way to really get the nerves out of the way? Because obviously it's a huge environment from everything you described.
Yeah, I mean, I think reality is as a football player, I mean, the camera doesn't lie. You know what I mean? So from my standpoint, I'm not a draft pick. You know, I didn't go to some big school. You know, I'm a Canadian kid down there and thankful for the opportunity. And at that point, I had nothing to lose. You know, I played some safety. I had never backpedaled in my life playing that position. And Steve Spagnuolo said, "Hey, you're only 6 feet. You know, if you played safety." And of course, I'm not going to say no. So, you know, like trying to learn new things and get your head wrapped around, you know, one less guy in the field and, you know, the spacing and everything else. So I don't think I was really all that nervous because there was no expectation. You know, I knew that I obviously wasn't a draft pick or an undrafted, you know, priority free agent. I was simply a guy that they came down, you know, maybe to fill out a roster spot for the camp, whatever it may have been. But I had nothing to lose. And for me, it was just, hey, put my best foot forward, learn as much as I can here because it's a unique opportunity, one that not everybody gets, and you know, try to just learn, absorb, and then apply the next time that you're on the field. And you know, I think I did the best job I could. Obviously, it didn't work out, and I have no regrets that way. But definitely served me well coming up here, and I think that's a big part of you know why I've still around in the CFL 5 years later. You know, a lot of people probably would say I shouldn't be or whatever, but it is what it is, and I'm thankful for that opportunity nonetheless.
You mentioned the relationship you have with Dave Onyemata, who is a defensive lineman for the New Orleans Saints and doing quite well this year in the NFL. And you guys were teammates with University of Manitoba Bisons. And in the words of Coach Dobie, he is the ultimate lottery pick in terms of a person to walk into your locker room and say, "Hey, can I play football?" Someone that is totally raw in terms of their skill, but super, super freakishly athletic. And even he was mentioning to me a conversation I had with Coach Pierre about the difference in some of the freakish athletes you find down in the U.S. and how Dave, a guy who was a Bison that had never touched a football in his whole life, was
Yeah.
able to walk into the locker room, was able to play as a Bison, was able to go down to a team like New Orleans and be able to do so well. So, with having said that, the relationship that you guys formed from being teammates, do you still keep in touch with him? And if so, what are some of the things that you guys talk about in terms of your game, or is it more so loose and casual conversation to keep things light?
No, good point. Yeah, Dave and I are still super close. You know, when I got engaged, you know, he was one of the first guys to text me and say congrats kind of thing. And, you know, I'd say we text kind of, you know, weekly, bi-weekly. Obviously in season, honestly, I just try to leave him alone. You know, obviously if he makes a couple nice plays, I'm going to blow up his phone and let him know. Cause I'm proud of him, you know, and I'm happy to see, you know, a good friend of mine winning and doing his thing. So, no, we're great friends. I'm super proud of obviously the career that he's carved off for himself, and he's still just Dave. You know, he's no different than the guy that was there. You know, Bison's super humble, super forthcoming. You know, would give you the shirt off your back kind of guy, and that you know the success and the money and the platform hasn't changed him, and that's what I really appreciate about him. And yeah, he was someone that I was fortunate to become really close with. I mean, he was over at my parents' house every Thanksgiving, for example, and my family was super close with his, and it's exciting to see you know his trajectory. You know, you never know what's going to come, and just to see how you know he's been able to kind of make it and make a career for himself, and the work that's gone into it behind the scenes that no one really saw. You know, it's a big testament to his character and his work ethic, his drive, and like I said, he's a great person beyond the football field. So couldn't be you know any more happy for him. And yeah, I'm the guy that got to play behind him for 3 years, and maybe that's why the Giants brought me down. Said if they couldn't get Dave, maybe I don't know, they get the guy behind him on camera or something. I don't know, but no, he's a great guy, and he deserves everything he has. So
It's so awesome to always see the success of teammates, and especially when it comes to playing football in a sport like football in Canada in comparison to America. Obviously, we know is super big, but that opportunity to play down in a league like the NFL, which you would arguably say is the biggest league in terms of popularity, revenue, everything
sure.
across North America, it's huge. And to see a close friend of yours succeed and still be that same humble, forthcoming guy is truly incredible. Now, to move over to a bit on more so in your career, because we've talked a lot about the elements of developing as a professional football player. And you were with Winnipeg and then now are currently with the Montreal Alouettes. So talk a bit about some of the transitions you went through with going to different teams and how you've continued to learn and adapt to different environments, knowing that the life of a professional athlete is never guaranteed, number one, and number two is always about being able to adapt.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously started in Edmonton. There was a couple of injuries in training camp. So they actually brought me over, basically had me as a fullback. Spent seven weeks, I believe, on the PR there my first year. And I'll be honest, it was, I wanted to do some stuff academically, law school or an MBA. And, I'll be completely honest again, like the fullback thing, it wasn't necessarily, my forte. It was a huge adjustment, and I tried and I tried and tried and tried to apply myself and to learn. But ultimately, there was kind of like that feeling in your gut where it's like, this is not the right time, right? This is not the right place. So luckily I got the blessing from Ed and Coach Moss to go back to school and to work on the things that I wanted to work on, and obviously play another year of Bisons. So going home, obviously, having a great year personally, winning the President's Trophy. Jason Moss calls me right away. He's like, "Hey, like you're coming back to camp, right? Like we're gonna leave you at linebacker now." And we had a chuckle about that, and obviously went back to Edmonton. Was basically the last linebacker cut the next year, and then came home, and that's when the realization came where it's like I'm not going back to Bison's here. I've already played my time, and you don't really know what's next. And I stayed ready. I know that Glenn Bruce, and called him up and went on the turf and stayed ready for any opportunity that came. And Kavis Reed gave me a shout about 2 weeks later and said, "Hey, come on out. We need you on special teams." So went out there, played 15 games for the Alouettes that year, and again, like did everything I could. Did a little bit of long snapping, played on all special teams, had a couple reps on defense in a couple 30 roles, and really to me kind of solidified, hey, like I can do this. And now let's make the best of it. And going into training camp the next year, blew out my shoulder in an exhibition game, and then had some kind of health complications that way. So missed all of 2018. And then it was kind of like, hey, like, am I going to be able to play football again, medically? And luckily I got cleared. Dr. McDonald here in the city did a great job and, made sure that I was A-okay. And the day later, Kyle Walters called my agent and offered me a contract again. So playing for Winnipeg, hometown team, little surreal, I think, at first. Obviously, with all the medical complications, that was something I was still navigating on my own. And knowing that team was here locally, made everything a little safer, I think, and more comfortable for me to say, yes, I'm going to go ahead and play. Went to the Bombers, unreal experience, fantastic organization, top down, playing in this city, for the great fans, for your teammates, for your family, and friends. It was an awesome experience. Obviously, I love a lot of those guys in that locker room, and I'm close friends with them, and proud to see them win. But it for me, after the scare I had kind of medically, was, do I want to be a special teamer for the rest of my life? And that was kind of the opportunity here in Winnipeg. I'm not going to start over Adam Bighill. I have a lot of respect for him and what he's done, and I learned a lot from him. But I know I'm not going to start over. And it was like, okay, so, do I play the few special teams, here and there, and do that? Or, this is kind of like a second chance, because I'm not necessarily supposed to be playing, given the doctor's kind of ruling. And do I kind of bet on myself and try to maximize my window of opportunity while I'm still relatively young and healthy? So it was a tough conversation with my family first, and extremely tough conversation with Coach O'Shea, knowing how good that team was. Week 10, I knew that they were going to come down and compete at least for a Grey Cup. And asking for my release was emotional, and it was difficult. There's no way around it, and I didn't know where I was going to go or who I was going to play with, if I was going to play somewhere else. But I knew that at this point, I really needed to take that opportunity and just see what else was out there, because I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into a role necessarily. Being only 26 and coming off the scare I did. And, literally 2 or 3 hours later, my agent says, "Hey, got a contract offer from Montreal again." And I'm like, "Okay, sounds good. Like, when do they want me?" And they're like, "Oh, tomorrow morning." And I'm like, "Tomorrow morning? they're like, yeah, you're going to fly out tomorrow morning, you're going to practice with them, and then you're going to fly to Calgary with them and play. I was like, holy smokes. All right. Sounds good. Quick turnaround. So literally flew out to Montreal, got a jersey, literally went to Calgary and played. And luckily I knew a lot of the staff and the players still from the year previous, and was able to go in, contribute right away, play all special teams, played defense, started 4 games at the end of the year, and snapped in 3. And I kind of felt like I found my spot. And I'm happy for the Bombers top down, all the players within that organization that won a Grey Cup. Do I have some of those what if moments? Initially I did, and then I just blocked FaceTime from Andrew and Nick and got through December, and then we were okay. So they still bug me about it, but it is what it is. And I made the decision that I thought was best for myself as a professional. And I'd like to think that with the opportunity Kahari Jones gave me in Montreal, I was able to take advantage of it. And here we are again, entering year 5 with a much bigger role to play on a team, and an opportunity and some comfort from that standpoint. But then on the flip side, it's like you're still the same old guy. You're still betting on yourself. You still have a chip on your shoulder. You still haven't earned anything yet. You got to prove yourself day in, day out. And I'm excited that Montreal is a place that kind of feels like a second home now, and try to make the most of it.
And it's so great to hear many of the twists and turns that happen in the career of a professional football player, but the determination and, quite frankly, the self-confidence that is needed to make those tough decisions. Because for anyone who's sitting at home, or for any person that maybe has not played at a high level sport or has been super competitive in that environment, it's always easy to take the convenient route or the simple route where, you just, as long as you get your paycheck or get the titles, the rings, or the status or the fame, then it's great. But I think that after a while, that feeling will always fade. And the important thing about being a professional football player that feels fulfilled and that feels that you have purpose is knowing that the work isn't done and that you always have to keep going to that next level. And the only time that you can sit back and watch the curtain draw is at the end of your career, when you're no longer playing and it doesn't matter. So obviously kudos to you, I must say, first, to making those tough decisions, because as easy as it would be to coast and to take the position that's easy and convenient and try to put yourself in the best position to just be on a team that's going to win, it's a lot more meaningful when you're challenging yourself and when you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to say, well, I want to make a bigger role for myself, and I want to make sure that I achieve greater things personally to be more a part of a team. Because I'm sure you understand, and for those out there who have played, do you think that it's really difficult, or that the feeling is different when you feel more part of a team's wins than if you're in a smaller role? Because that sometimes plays a factor.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, not necessarily, I don't think it's as black and white as that. But definitely, I mean, being a starter and literally playing, starting at weak side backer and playing beside Enoch and clinching the first playoff berth for Montreal and doing well and having double-digit tackles, like those things are ways that you can contribute to a football team winning. And yes, there's other ways in a smaller role that you can help. But again, like I just had fun. I got to start a linebacker. I was snapping footballs. I was, playing on all special teams. And, again, they gave me an opportunity, and I'd like to think that I put my best foot forward there. And, it was funny, actually, when I signed it, I called Vernon right away. And Vernon and I were there in 2017. Montreal traded him and didn't play him because he was a third string quarterback. And at that time, I was just the no-name special teamer kind of deal. And we lived in the same area, and we kind of formed this little bond. And, watching all the hurdles that he's kind of overcome, and now seeing what he's done, with some severe and, opportunities for deterrent, and just how he's overcome and persevered. And, then I come back and kind of do the same thing. And we have other guys across the board that I don't want to say we're kind of write-offs, but had not been able to maximize their ability elsewhere. And, we all kind of channeled that and kept that as a chip on our shoulder in Montreal. And Kahari's a great leader of men. He's a great person. And I was really fortunate to be part of that team last year. We didn't win a playoff game. We didn't make it as far as we wanted to, but just to be able to see what you're able to accomplish with some accountability and trust amongst your peers is really quite special.
It was so great to see the things that the Montreal Alouettes were able to do, considering the revolving door that it seemed the franchise was going through ever since the post Calvillo era, right? You
Yep.
look at the success that they had growing up when I was in junior high and the back-to-back Grey Cup wins and having what people could argue is a top three quarterback in CFL history.
Yep.
But it's obviously difficult to be a successful football team if there isn't a strong foundation in place. And to see the work that Kahari has done and to see the work that Vernon Adams has finally seen the benefits being reaped is amazing, because I was saying for a long time when I was watching the Alouettes is, why not give Vernon Adams a chance? They gave 20 people chances like crazy, and it just went quarterback after quarterback. And finally seeing him get to gel into that role was truly special. And even mentioning Kahari, some of the past guests on the show have talked about their personal experience playing with him and his rapport and his ability to be a good leader of men, and also just his football IQ.
Yep.
Former guest Nick Lewis was talking about his opportunities when he played with Kahari Jones with the Stamps in the early or in the mid 2000s. Him just drawing on his hand, okay, in the huddle, okay, you draw, run a post, run a fly, run an out, and run a this, okay, go. And but he could string together that backyard football gunslinger style because he had such a high football IQ. And it really speaks to the success that he's had with Montreal. And I think that he's going to be one of the next great coaches in the CFL, along with, Coach Orlando Steinhauer, and obviously Mike O'Shea has done such a great job. And it's really good to see that transition. And so, especially with the benefits that you've reaped from being on Montreal, it also shows in that work ethic and that oneness with those guys who are kind of written off. So now that you've had those good experiences so far, but not to say that it's the end of the road, how do you now take those experiences you've learned and infuse them bit by bit into the athletes that you and Andrew have been able to positively impact from starting pro prep this year?
For sure. And I think for us, it's just a matter of kind of coming full circle, right? I think everyone has a different journey. Everyone has a bit different story, a background, different obstacles they have to overcome. And obviously, I mean, Andrew's journey is much different than mine, from the onset. And obviously, he's a future Hall of Famer, arguably the best Canadian to have ever played the game, especially at that position. And again, just the fact that we can come back now to the place that gave us so much, gave us the opportunity, all the people that have supported us along the way in our own rights, and kind of come back and bring that full circle now and say, okay, like there's been some great people and things that we've been able to share in, to get us to where we are. Is everything perfect? No. And if there's ways that we can improve upon, the current landscape of development here in the city, why not use our trial and error, our experiences to kind of shed light on those areas, so that these kids kind of get a head start. Maybe don't have to learn the tough way, that Andrew and I may have learned some of those experiences through. And, now it's just, again, we're not here without the city of Winnipeg. And I say that, there's a lot of great people here to kind of take us to that next level, and that have supported us kind of unwavering in our journey. And it means so much to sit here and even to talk to you. There's so much talent, there's so much quality, there's just great people that sometimes they just need to know, hey, like there is this resource available, or hey, you just need somebody to believe in you, and you need that opportunity. And if Andrew and I can continue, along with Desiree Scott, to provide those opportunities to young men and women in the city, again, we feel like we can sleep a little easier at night knowing that we're doing our part to kind of push the games forward, to challenge these athletes, to show them, hey, like, yeah, Winnipeg, may not be, the glitz and glam of Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto. We're not super close to the States. We don't play American football. Whatever. But hey, there's still opportunity. And if you have perseverance, determination, the willpower, you can do anything with it. And, it goes for all sports. It goes for all backgrounds. It goes for, anybody that has that determination to win, win the rep, win the day, get better. We want to work with them and just continue to push them forward. And again, provide the resources in that 360-degree way, on and off the field, to get them there. And we've been super fortunate with the feedback and enrollment so far. And it's just great to see that, sport in this province is on a steady incline like this. And that's what's exciting. And at some point, I'm going to hang up the cleats, and Andrew will do the same, and Desiree is going to do the same. And we're all going to sit there and put on the TV and watch the next, Winnipeg-born, players in their respective sports to play, and we'll cheer cheer them on and be their fans. And it's awesome. This community is fantastic, and yeah, Pro Prep is a small part, now, and we hope to continue to just provide resources and an outlet for student athletes to get better and to showcase their skills.
And it's such a great way to really, wrap up the idea of what the opportunity is here for athletes in our province to do with playing sport. You mentioned being those next group of older fans to be able to watch after hanging up the cleats. The next
Yep.
person that does accomplish things like the Andrew Harris and like the Desiree and like yourself, being from Winnipeg, because you're right, we're not it's not a glitz and glamour place, and we're not the ooh la la capital of Canada, but at the same time, Winnipeg is
Yep.
very tough city that has lots of great talent, and I think what speaks to Winnipeg's character is overcoming adversity, and I think that's a big theme with our city and that is so underrated as a football team, as the athletes that come out. But the amazing things that Winnipeg athletes have been able to accomplish is really going to continue to shine and only go up as time goes on. So before we wrap up today's episode, there is one final question that I did want to ask. What is the biggest goal that you have, or the next big goal that you guys have with Pro Prep to achieve, and what do you think that may look like if you were to guess? I would say.
For sure. Well, I mean, there's a couple different ways I could answer that, and without stepping on any toes and letting any cats out of the bag. We're just super excited to bring this to all sports. It's one of those things again where we've lived it differently, right? Desiree's experience in soccer is completely different than my experience in football is completely different from Andrew, and everyone else that we have on our team. And we're just, again, extremely blessed and grateful for the people that have wanted to collaborate already. And we look forward to, again, supporting and empowering athletes from all domains, all sports, all backgrounds, and do so with more than just skill acquisition. I mean, that's the piece everyone's getting already. It's what do you do in the classroom? How do you prepare yourself to go and get that scholarship or that opportunity? How are you getting involved in your community? What do you want to do post-secondary? What kind of career do you want to lead? So there's a bunch of different areas there that we're working on, and we have a great group, and we're super excited to kind of, I guess, more formally announce those in the new year. But again, just stay tuned, and I promise you there's a lot of big things coming from Pro Prep Academy in the short term.
I'm looking forward to. Well, DJ, that's going to be the end of our episode today, but I really, really appreciate the time you've had to come and talk and to share in the stories and the adversity you've overcome, the lessons you've learned, and how it's really wrapped up nicely to help the next generation of athletes in Manitoba, in not just football, but obviously all sports going forward. It was a super great conversation.
Awesome. No, appreciate you having me on. And like I said, man, you're doing a great thing too. So I highly recommend, everyone at home tune in. And if you haven't, spoke yet, this guy can talk and he'll bring out the best in you. So again, thank you. I love the work you're doing. And again, just another one of Winnipeg's own, putting the city on the map. So kudos to you and appreciate you.
Well, everyone, thanks for listening to today's episode with Montreal Alouettes linebacker and co-founder of Pro Prep Academy, DJ Lalama.